In addition to the order of operations, there are some other properties that real numbers carry. So I'm going to use specific examples, but know that this generalizes to any three or any numbers that are real numbers. Okay, and that's what you're going to see if you look at this in the book. Okay, they're going to use A, B's, and C's, and these are just real numbers of any kind. So commutativity, the idea with commutativity is really switching. Okay, and so when we think about the addition property of commutativity, that's just saying if we have something like 3 plus 4, and we know that's 7, that's going to be the same as 4 plus 3. We could do it in the other order. Okay, so commutativity is just switching, multiplication, same idea. Okay, we get the same thing no matter which way we do it. Okay, also keep in mind these properties do not work with subtraction and division. That's why we're just focusing on these. Okay, associativity is the idea of chunking, and that comes from the kind of root of the word associate. So if you associate with people, you're kind of like close to them. So it has to do with grouping, and so then our parentheses are going to move. Okay, so if we have like 3 plus 4, and that's grouped together, and then we add 5 to it, that's the same as saying that we can do, instead of 3 plus 4 plus 5, or 3 plus 4 and then plus 5, we can do 4 plus 5 first, and then add 3. Okay, keeping in mind order of operations. Multiplication, same idea. We have 3 and then 4 times 5, and then that's the same as 3 times 4 first, and then times 5. Identity is the idea that you get what you started with. So if you want to start with 3 and end with 3, well, we know that we need to add 0. So 0 is called the additive identity. Okay, and it actually doesn't matter which way we do this. And under the operation of multiplication, if we start with 3 and we want to end with 3, well, then we need to multiply by 1, and for that reason, 1 is called the multiplicative identity. Okay. The language of inverse is a little different. For inverse, what that's saying is that if I start with 3, what do I need to multiply by? Okay, and this is my question area, in order to get to 1, which is 0. And I should say this is addition, rather. What do I need to add to 3 to get to the additive identity of 0? Well, we know that's the opposite of 3, or some of us might call that negative 3. Okay, so whenever we have a number, we add its opposite to get to the additive identity. Under the operation of multiplication, we ask a similar question now. 3 times what will give us the multiplicative identity of 1? Well, that's going to be the reciprocal. Okay, and just so we see that word, reciprocal. Okay, and that's going to be true for anything in general. Cancellation that property says is really this one, where if we have a number and we want to, or I'm sorry, actually that's false. Let's back up. Okay, cancellation says that if we have like 3 plus 4, or sorry, formally it's a little weird using actual numbers, but if we have like 3 is equal to 3, then if we have a true statement like that, then that can, if we do something if we do something to one side, we have to do that same thing to the other side. And conversely, we can go in reverse. Okay, it could also be the additive property of equality. Similar with multiplication, if we have 3 is equal to 3, then it's also true that 3 times 4 is equal to 3 times 4. And again, you can go in either way. All right, distributive property is something like 3, and this is, students like to confuse this, and I understand why. So if we have 3 times the quantity of 4 plus 5, this does distribute as 3 times 4 plus 3 times 5. That is to say, we have this, and there's a whole big long reason why this is true, which we'll talk about in class. Okay, so this is true, but now what students like to do is kind of switch the operations. So this is, what I'm about to do is a no-go. Alright, so if we have 3 plus and then 4 times 5, okay, that is not true that we can't distribute. Similarly, if we have 3, this is the more common one, so watch out for this one. This is a hazard. If we have 3 and then 4 times 5, okay, this is really just the associative property hidden, right? But students like to say, oh, well, this is 3 times 4 times 3 times 5, okay? But that's not true if you look right up here, right? So this is not equal, okay? So watch out for that. The last property that I'll share with you briefly, we will see over and over and over again, but if it is true that, and I'm just going to use two general A's and B's here, if it is true that A times B is equal to 0, well, the only way we can multiply to 0 is if A equals 0 or B is equal to 0, okay? And we will use this property over and over and over. Okay, so this is the property of real, or some properties of the real numbers and examples of them. Again, you can generalize them to A, B, and C for any real numbers, which they do in the textbook. So have a look at that if you want to see the more general forms.